A Baseball Champions League. That's a real thing now, something international baseball fans have been talking about for years. It happened for the first time last week in Yucatan, Mexico. Though it was a much smaller event than people may have been hoping for, this is expected to grow into something very big in the near future. Today I want to talk about this new event. What countries were represented? Why was it started? What are their plans for expanding it in the near future? What that might look like in the future? And a question that's sure to be asked, why the very best professional leagues in the world will not be taking part. It was a short, simple event taking place over 4 days. The 2022 champions from 4 different leagues of 4 different countries were represented there. From Mexico's LMB, Leones de Yucatan, playing in front of their home crowd. From Colombia's LPB, Caimanes de Barranquilla, a team that not only won the Colombian title in 2022, but went on to win the whole Caribbean Series. From the Cuban National Series, Alazanes de Granma. And from the American Association, the Fargo-Moorhead Redhawks. A quick 4-team round-robin was played from Thursday to Saturday. Fargo and Barranquilla were 2-1. Yucatan and Granma were 1-2. On Sunday, Fargo and Barranquilla met in a championship game. Fargo dominated 8-0 to capture the inaugural title. Fargo had also won the previous meeting over Barranquilla in the round-robin 10-6. You'll be forgiven if you knew nothing about this event. It was the last few days of September and the first day of October. That's a time when most baseball fans are thinking of the pennant race and the postseason. Even for fans of international baseball, it was taking place at the same time as the Asian Games and the European Baseball Championship. Furthermore, it wasn't well promoted. All in all, an easy event to miss. But this year's first edition of the tournament was just a tiny sample of what we can expect in the future. Next year, they hope to expand to 8 teams. Later on, they're planning on having a Champions League in Asia and another one in Europe. The champions of those two and the winner of the Baseball Americas Champions League all come together for a World Championship. This had been planned for a few years. The American Association was looking for ways to grow internationally. They and the LMB were in talks to hold a postseason match between the champions of the two leagues. Then the WBSC got involved and the idea grew into a whole international tournament. A few peculiarities. One is that it involved the 2022 champions, even though all 4 leagues had already crowned a new champion this year. And they tried to keep the players from their championship teams together as much as possible. The biggest club championship in baseball, involving different countries, has always been the Caribbean Series. But in that event, you have players from the losing teams joining the championship teams. You also have major league players in their off-season joining the champion team from their home country. And players wear the uniforms of the country, not that single ball club. So it's somewhere between a club championship and a competition between countries. The Baseball Champions League, on the other hand, is strictly one league champion versus another. All 4 leagues benefited from this. The American Association is an independent league that a lot of casual fans don't know about. It doesn't get the kind of attention that AAA ball gets, and attendance has been on the decline almost every year since 2011. The Baseball Champions League gives the American Association the chance to be the sole representative of the US and Canada. No doubt the kind of exposure they were looking for. For the LMB, they've been wanting to do something like this, but there's little opportunity to do so. With the LMB crowning its champion in early September, and the LMP, Mexico's Winter League, opening its season in October, with many of the same players that were used over the summer, there's a very small window for the LMB champion to compete against the champions of other summer leagues, especially since many of those other leagues are still playing into October. The Cuban National Series champion used to compete in the Caribbean Series, but they recently made the switch from a Winter League to a Summer League, so there was nowhere for the champion to go. Now, after winning the Cuban title, they've got something bigger to look forward to once again. And for the Colombian League, it gave Caimanes a chance to get their players back together for a little tune-up before their season begins. October is not only a time when many leagues are ending their seasons, it's also a time when many more are about to get started. How do the 4 leagues compare with one another? Well, it's almost an even match. As you saw, the round-robin ended with every team having at least 1 win and at least 1 loss, a sure sign that the teams are almost equal. The final game was a blowout, but that was just 1 game. Colombia's league is a recent participant in the Caribbean Series. The Cuban National Series also competed there just a few years ago. Both leagues had a team win the Caribbean Series in the last decade. The best hitter in the Colombian League last year was also one of the best hitters in the American Association the summer before. Players often go back and forth between Mexico and the American Association, sometimes between Cuba and Mexico too. If they were to hold this event 3 more times over the next 3 weeks, there's a very good chance we'd see 4 different champions. And now would be a good time to point out why we don't see the champions from the world's top leagues, like MLB, NPB, and KBO, in the Baseball Champions League. The most obvious reason is the timing. At the end of September, all the top summer leagues are just finishing up their regular season, and their postseason runs till the end of October, sometimes into November. The other one that should be obvious is the difference in talent. The American Association is made up of players not in the MLB system. If they were good enough, they would be in the Major League system. Sometimes they work their way back to the major leagues, but only the best players in independent ball get to do that. NPB is played at a higher level than AAA, which is higher than the American Association. KBO, now we're getting closer, but I'd still say the KBO champion would easily be the favorite here, and that would ruin the field's competitiveness. So why not have the champions of MLB, NPB, and KBO meet in a separate championship? Well, then you'd only have a 3-team Champions League, and that's not much of a league. Not to mention a major difference in talent levels between those three, especially between MLB and KBO, so it's not going to happen. Someday maybe, but for now the best idea is for a Champions League involving all the leagues below the KBO level, and this could be a good way for the rest of the baseball world to catch up to the top 3 by getting them all to compete against one another. Now, what will this Baseball Champions League look like in the future? They said they want to add a European Champions League, an Asian Champions League, expand the American Champions League, then bring them all together for a World Championship. Sounds like a great idea. Actually, there already is a European Champions Cup that takes place every mid-season in Europe, usually in June. They take the champions from the Dutch, Italian, Czech, and German leagues from the year before, often the runner-up team from each league as well. Other countries like Spain and France are also involved. There's a lower tournament with the champion clubs from other countries, promotion and relegation between the two tournaments. So they really don't need to do anything there. The Champions Cup already serves the purpose. Holding a Champions League in September would be kind of a waste of time. That's also when the various leagues out there have their postseason. In Asia, as I've already said, NPB and KBO won't be participating. Probably not the CPBL either, though if they can make it work, the CPBL champion would fit right in. Players often go back and forth between the CPBL and the LMB with similar success. The two leagues are close in overall talent. It would be great to see the champions of the two leagues face off. If that's going to work, the CPBL needs to find a way to finish their season sooner. They used to be the first to start and the first to finish in Asia. In 2019, they held the Taiwan Series in mid-October. This year, their regular season doesn't end till the 19th of October. Next year, they're adding a 6th team, so they might go to 6 games a week per team instead of the 4 to 5 games they play now. Then they can finish in mid-September and the champion can participate in the Asian Champions League. I don't think that's in their plans, but it's something they might want to consider. In Japan, they've previously held a championship series between the winners of the BC League and the Shikoku Island League Plus, the two main independent leagues. The winner of that series would make a great addition to the Champions League. They've got former NPB players, a few ex-Major League players, some young players that end up making it onto NPB rosters. They'd be able to compete. Korea also has an independent league. Not sure what the level is, but the champion of that would be the best team to represent Korea. The Australian Baseball League is getting ready to start its season around this time. They can send the winner of the Claxton Shield from the previous winter. Our winter, their summer. The league is on par with some of the winter leagues in the Caribbean, so it'd be a nice addition. They've talked about having a separate Champions League for countries in Oceania, but I can't imagine what other leagues would be able to participate with an actual chance of winning it. Better to group Australia and Asia together. The Chinese Baseball League is all finished by this time. They can send their champion too, though they would be the underdog in the group. As for the Americas, there was already one Winter League represented there this year. That was the Colombian League. In future years, there's the possibility of adding the champion clubs from the Dominican League, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Panama, Curacao, all winter leagues except Mexico. I can't imagine two leagues from the same country having teams in this, especially when those two teams might have some of the same players. The leagues in Nicaragua and Panama are on about the same level as the Colombian League. The leagues in Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and Venezuela are on a higher level, but that would be brought down a bit since they would not have their active Major League players at this time. Curacao has a lower level league. They played in the Caribbean Series for the first time this year, but it was really more of a national team than an individual club. I don't know how their champion team, without any reinforcements, would fare against other champion ball clubs from the Americas. It's something they'd have to try and guess before allowing them to compete. If they did add Curacao, that would make 10 teams in the Americas. You could have 2 5-team groups, then have semifinals and finals, but that would take some time. Depending on how much time they have, they might want to reduce the number of teams. In Asia, you'd have 4 or 5 teams, the Independent League champs from Japan and Korea, the ABL champs from Australia, the CBL champions from China, and maybe the Taiwan Series winner from the CPBL. Europe holds its usual 8-team Champions Cup. Winner usually comes from the Netherlands or Italy. Could come from Germany or Czechia too. I definitely feel like the European representative would be a big underdog every time. but they would be talented enough to pull off some upsets, and one day make a Cinderella run. So imagine if we were to see the champion of the last Caribbean Series, the European Cup champion, and the Taiwan Series champion all battling it out for a world championship. Maybe we won't have all that. The CPBL's participation is a long shot, and we don't know how many Caribbean leagues will get to join in. And even if we do get all of them on board, it won't be a true world championship. The World Series, Japan Series, and probably the Korean Series too will all exist on a different level. But it will be fun to watch. Anyway, that's all for this one. Until next time, this is Baseball International. See ya.